story begins with our hero Roy recalling how his mother told him to live freely, but due to numerous obligations, he cannot afford this freedom. At the border of the Lutetia Empire, a figure in a black hood hung over the soldiers, frightening them all because they thought it was the great dark mage, and he raised his hand and with one spell devastated the entire battlefield. After he destroyed most of the enemies, the rest were gripped by fear and retreated, having no chance against the dark sage Eclipse, who reported to the allies that the enemy had fled and they no longer needed to pursue them. While everyone praised him, Eclipse revealed that he had another personality besides the role of the dark sage of the Ludish kingdom, after which he left the battlefield with a teleportation spell and immediately changed his appearance to assume the role of his other personality. Cloud overshadowed the white swordsman of the Albios kingdom, went to check on the knights, and heard that they were afraid of being next after the recent attack on the Lutetia kingdom, so they remained vigilant to notice shadows in the mountains near the border, and then Cloud simply cut through the mountain that blocked their view. After the mountain was cut, the advancing enemy forces were frightened because they did not expect to see the holy white sword here. Cloud thought this was also a trick, and that the knights would now be able to guard the borders themselves, so neither the white sword nor the dark sage was real. Having fulfilled his duties as sword, saint, and sage, he returns home to the Duchy of Berland, where immediately upon entering the room the boy again takes on his true appearance, although already very exhausted after such work before dawn. The life of a triple agent was too hard for him. His real name is Roy Lever, whom the family calls a fallen nobleman, not without reason. He hides his other personalities because he cannot just go to the academy with such high titles, and revealing this would bring no good either. He constantly lacks sleep and sometimes hopes that being expelled from the academy will free up his time, so he took a short nap since he was late anyway, and later heard a knock on the door and replied that he was already awake. Roy's sister Reena Level entered the room with his lunch and was surprised that he was already ready and in uniform a few minutes before the usual time, around noon. She asked him to cover the afternoon classes today, and he planned to do so, so she suggested having lunch together since she had already prepared some food. Roy considered himself lucky to have such a successful sister, but she told him to just work on himself because if he continued to be lazy, he would again remain a fallen nobleman. Roy did not care what they called him if it bothered him less. Reena was upset because her brother was late to the academy every day. Renglas was bad at practical lessons, had no friends, and sat at his desk all day. He was so bad at everything that everyone at the academy considered him a local quota. Roy was calm and recalled that their Glass Rain Academy was founded as part of a three-country alliance of Lucia, Albios, and the Berlin Kingdom. The academy was to train talents from all three countries with good teachers, and since Berlin also had to send someone, they sent Roy, and he did not like being among so many active students. His sister tried to encourage him, saying he was more capable than that, and the way she overestimated him annoyed him a bit because she was not wrong, but he could just tell Reena that. He was the strongest. He thought she would worry anyway seeing his pensive face, and Reena told him something was wrong. He could always talk to her. She came closer to comfort him. She told her brother that he was not alone and that she would always support him. Roy felt embarrassed by her concern, so he said it was okay and told her to go because he could not resist her kindness. And now he decided to go and inform a certain person about the previous night. He entered that person's room in his house, and upon entering, was quite surprised by what he saw. His father became close with the maid. Roy's father, Linus Level, was the current head of the Level family, and asked his son why such an influential person was here. Roy informed his father that last night the Hala Empire invaded Lucia, and that he came to report this. Linus Level was a very influential man. 12 years ago, he organized an alliance of 3 nations. The other 2 nations called him the Gray Fox, and he is one of the few who knows Roy's true identity. Lannies told Roy that if he quickly repels the attacks, there is no need to report, because the Hala Empire's attacks are usual for them. The Hala Empire was a great state and controlled almost half of the continent. But despite this, their current emperor aggressively expanded the territory, and Roy, hearing about this, believes that their invasions have recently become excessive. Linus asked if Roy was worried about the incident 5 years ago when many of their children were kidnapped. When I said that Reena was also among those children, and if it continues like this, their country might soon be attacked, Linus recalled that a group of saboteurs was destroyed before Ray arrived. But both know that this happened because of Reena's unconscious use of power, and Linus and Roy want to hide her secret power because once it is revealed, the attacks will intensify. And the danger is that Reena herself does not know about her abilities, so they cannot allow her to fall into the enemy's hands. And Rory wants to fully focus on protecting his country, but will not be able to do so until successors for the Sage and the Holy Sword appear. Roy's inspiration to protect everyone was his mother, a heroine who died on the battlefield 12 years ago saving her family. And before her last mission, she asked Roy to live freely, but Roy regrets because he cannot do that yet, and he coughed and worked very well. It was hard for him to become the strongest, because he wanted to protect Reena and their family with his own strength. The next day he, as always, came late to class and the students again began to mock him, but despite all the insults Roy just sat down and settled to rest as usual, and others said that Roy's family should be ashamed that such a famous family produced a failure, since his father formed the alliance of three peoples and was an outstanding man. His mother was the secret wielder of the sword and a heroine who risked her life for family and country. Roy's brother served the king, and his sister Reena was second in middle school. In Berlin, all gray-haired people were considered geniuses, except for one who was always idling. Students constantly talked about the great sage and the holy white sword, who were extremely strong and always protected their countries from attacks. Rory remembers that 10 sword demons were given titles, and among them the strongest receives the title of Sword Saint. In Lutetia there is a similar hierarchy for mages, and the strongest mages are called sages. Those two were the goal of almost every student, but our guy is not interested in this he just wants to rest when he has time. Soon the professor came and was a little surprised to see Roy in class, and immediately after the start of the class hour, announced that today there would be practical training battles, so all students were asked to go to the training ground. Roy became upset because he did not expect a troublesome day, and when the teacher told the students that the best today would receive special privileges during training, Roy was just going to lose quickly and slack off. It was then that the teacher introduced Roy to his. On him was a beautiful girl, whom even Roy knew because she was a third-rank student of their academy, Yukina Crawford. He might lose, but the duel against her could be difficult. Now she took a stance and greeted Roy. After exchanging greetings, the sparring began, and she made the first move. Roy saw that she was trying to hit his sword, and he only parried her strikes with his sword with a frightened face. He knew he could deliberately lose, but that would leave a bitter aftertaste because Yukina is the heir to the legacy of the first Sword Saint and clearly strives to become one, and her third place among the 10 sword demons proves that she is a true talent. This makes her an ideal candidate for synchronization with the sword, but she's still far from the level of at least the top 7 swordsmen in the world due to obvious weakness, and Roy would just like a strong successor to appear and take his place so he could retire and rest with Reena, but he also wants Yukina herself to truly become strong. He made a move to point out Yukina's weak spot, and she was embarrassed by such a close encounter. Ward decided to help her a little and point out her weak spots. Yukina was grateful for his offer, although she still believed she would win. Roy saw that she attacked with great force almost without defense, and that was enough against other students, but against stronger opponents she needed to understand that defense is more important. Because of this, Roy struck Yukina on the right arm so she would feel pain due to the open weak spots. Then she took a stance, as if she was going to attack fully on the next move. Roy noticed that she was aiming at the demon on the right, so he decided it was better to just give in and pretend he barely missed. To his surprise, Yukina turned out to be the owner of magical eyes, and he knows how much trouble they can cause. Magic eyes were a rare ability that manifested only in those with great magical power, and apparently, this was a wolf's eye of the highest level. With these eyes, she could see the enemy's movements in advance, and Roy was sure that she had figured out his plan to pretend to lose to the villain, so he could not risk her noticing his intention to feign defeat. He had to hide his intentions again, because if people found out he was stronger than Yukina, it would bring him even more suspicion and trouble, and he did not know what to do while Yukina struck blow after blow. Another one in a different style than before. Roy noticed that she sharply changed her attack and simply let the sword take the hit and fly away. To admit defeat before her impressive skill. After the lesson, Roy returned home to rest and remembered that no one noticed such an unmotivated boy like him, so it was time for him to make every effort and play his other role. He used puppet magic and left a doll in the attic to replace him. During his absence, he teleported to the kingdom of Oldios to play the role of Cloud, the white swordsman, and swapped places with the doll he left instead of himself, and the doll shared its memories, so Roy now clearly understood what had happened here during his absence. This room of his was like a hideout known only to him. Others believed that Swordscene wandered freely, so they did not know where to find him. Besides this, he changed into Swordscene's costume, sat on a cloud, and slightly altered his appearance using illusion magic, after which he set off to the royal palace of King Albuquerque. All the castle inhabitants warmly welcomed him, respected the strongest swordsman in the world, and Cloud only smiled in response and went to the royal hall. He noticed that the king was constantly being reported alarming news from informants and monsters, and when everyone saw that Cloud had arrived, they fell silent, and the king decided to ask the holy swordsman Cloud what he thought about possible attacks on their court. King Albert is one of those great rulers, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that only he could have made an alliance with the ancient adversary Lutetia, as they say. Let's take Cloud Booter. He showed respect to the king and said that politics was not for him, but he could say only one thing. He could repel an army of several thousand if it came. The king did not hesitate long and ordered the general to withdraw troops from the borders, not wanting to discuss it further. Ministers were impressed by the king's absolute faith in the swordsman Cloud, and the king said to keep the army until the right time for the offensive. Clo was ready to carry out any order of the king, and 2 years ago he was ordered to repel the invasion of the empires and return the captured lands by force. King Albert said that now is the time to gather forces so as not to waste resources on unnecessary military buildup. Cloud noted that their enemy probably intends to reclaim the lost lands, although they did not originally belong to him. Albert knew how greedy that king of Gallia was, but still tried to avoid him by any means. Regarding the war, Cloud agreed with the king, but they cannot just sit idly by and allow them to attack. The young emperor of the Hallian Empire sought conquests, and killing him was difficult even for Cloud because he was guarded by 5 bodyguards. Each of them could match him in strength, so Cloud patiently allowed the king of Gallia to slowly send troops and guards to the front line to take advantage of the moment when the emperor's guard would arrive there. He would also constantly reduce their numbers at the front, so eventually their numbers would steadily decrease. However, this would be a difficult and long task, but it is the only strategy they can apply. King Albert hoped they would surrender soon, and Cloud saw that Albert did not want people to suffer. But nothing can be done until the current emperor of the Gallian Empire is replaced, and Roy will have to continue being the sword saint and great sage until a successor is found. After that, Roy returned home completely exhausted, and the next day, as the great sage, he had to visit the king of the Lutetian Empire, so as just Roy he needed rest, and since dinner was soon, he took a short nap before Reena arrived. Later, Roy heard a knock on the door and let the person in, thinking it was Reena, but to his surprise, the visitor turned out to be Yukina Crawford, who entered his room and called him. For skipping classes in, Roy asked her why she was in his room, and she replied that she just felt like something was wrong in their training fight. During the fight, she felt that Roy knew her weak points, and it reminded her of the time when her grandmother, the first sword sink, taught her. Roy asked her why compare him to someone so powerful at all, but Yukina would not believe his muscular movements and the focused look of Rafasad. She was already sure there must be a reason why Roy hides his true abilities, and since Roy knew lying was pointless, he admitted that he was holding back because. Imagining, Roy noticed that he just happened to spot a weak spot because her moves were too aggressive, but she shouted at him to stop pretending to be innocent and honest in how he saw through her last trick. Roy realized that her charming eyes noticed this, and now he hesitates whether to pretend he didn't react in time or do something else, and just then his sister Reena came to call her brother to dinner. It turned out that her brother was being pressed by a girl. Yukina greeted Reena casually, and Reena, with a fake smile, asked if she was dealing with her brother. Brother, Yukina said she needed a minute to talk to him and asked to give them some privacy. Roy saw how clumsy this girl was despite the situation. Then Reena pushed Yukina away from her brother and asked her to leave because she had already planned dinner with her brother. Yukina said she trusts her swordswoman instincts and her eyes, so when there are almost no swordsmen stronger than her at the academy, she wants any help to become a sword saint like her grandmother, she feels. And that is another reason why she should become stronger as soon as possible, so she asked Roy to help. He recalls that since he became a sword saint, no one has tried to take that title from him, so he admires Yukina's thirst for power. He can't just help her because she is not yet at the level where he can teach her. He wants her to first understand what she lacks herself, so he replies that she can do as she wishes, but he will not teach her, and he would be grateful if she just watched and learned on her own and did not wake him up in the morning by force. In the morning, hearing his conditions, Yukina was glad and thanked him, promising to do as he said. When she left, Reena got angry because her brother would now have more trouble, but he assured her it was good since at least Yukina would not come every day, although he did not understand why she was in such a hurry since she was only a first-year student. Later, Roy transformed into a great sage named Eclipse and checked what was happening there. The knights asked him for a favor. After that, Eclipse went to the port. If it were an ordinary animal, he would have told the soldiers to figure it out themselves. But this is the mythical creature Kraken. Eclipse easily dodged Kraken's attacks, and before the next attack could hit him, Eclipse was going to fight back with bare hands, but suddenly dodged the touch and flew back because many people were watching, so he had to maintain the image of a great sage and avoid hand-to-hand combat since his style is sword fighting. Therefore he raised his hand up and uttered the legendary spell found in ancient texts, which can only be used by a person with immense magical power. He summoned the divine thunder spear at the mythical beast, and it scorched its whole body, just like that it coped with the trouble. People recognize ancient divine magic and have never seen such powerful magic before. Word played the role of Eclipse, the great sage, perfectly hiding his. There was a smile on his face, and although he was happy, he understood that he needed to find a replacement for this lifelong position to move more freely. He wanted someone as passionate as Yukina, who aspired to become a swordsman, and when that happened, he was sure that in a few years this person would be able to take his place. Then he teleported home and rested, and later, when Reena was supposed to wake him up, Roy suddenly heard her scream. When Roy came to school, Yukina followed him everywhere he went, even to the cafeteria, and when he asked her not to follow him and not to wake him up every morning, she said she was doing it for observation practice and wanted to watch him as much as possible. Since she believed that masters differ even in everyday actions, Roy asked her why she couldn't stop following him and watching him so intently, and she replied that she was simply curious. So Roy cannot get out of this situation. Through her gaze he also could not rest peacefully, but Yukina believed that he was sleeping like a baby and even recorded his behavior. Roy asked if she had learned anything. She replied that she needed time. Later, after classes, Roy returned to his room. Yukina followed him and appeared out of nowhere. Because of this, he asked why she wanted to be in his room, since she wanted to constantly watch him. After some time, Roy tried to explain to her that he was not engaged in any secret training, but was just loafing around. Yukina decided to sit and read her book, and Roy, out of curiosity, asked what book it was. Since she always carried and read it, Yukina replied that it was a book written by her grandmother. It was about the mindset of a swordsman and his techniques. It was her favorite book, and she followed everything written in it. Roy asked if this book advised her to stay with a boy who was always loafing around, to which she replied that she just wanted to take on new challenges. She began to talk about her grandmother and how extraordinary she was, because as a sword saint her power was the dream of all swordsmen and guardians of the kingdom of Albios. Yukina wanted to be like her grandmother. Grandmother, a person who can be trusted and who will save the situation, and she will do everything to become like that. Roy told her that this was already enough to be third among the freshmen, and there was no need to rush so much. It was better to calmly learn the basics, but Yukina shouted that there was no time. Her loud voice caught Roy by surprise. When he stood up, he noticed that she for some reason seemed frozen, and when he asked her about it, she replied that it was none of his business. And now she will say goodbye for today. The way she left made Roy. Probably she said something wrong there. 3 days later, Yukina again started following Roy as usual, and he simply asked when it would end. Yukina replied that it was a mean question. Before she could answer, some guy approached Roy and asked if he was Roy Livel. Roy confirmed and asked the guy, who seemed to be from a noble circle, what he wanted. The confident guy introduced himself as Tim Townsend. A 6th-ranked demon of the school and heir to the Townsend estates near Dupedum, Roy considered him ordinary for the 6th rank, 6th in the 3rd year, and again asked why he was here. Tim explained that he came not for Roy, but for Yukina, because he wanted to watch her behavior as a friend. Fans, because they have to get married and raise the next sword. Yukina got angry and reminded Tim that she was promised freedom at the academy, but Tim from the very beginning wanted to control her and did not want his fans to be friends with some fallen nobleman, so as his future wife she had to behave more wisely. Roy does not understand why this guy thought so highly of himself, although he is only 6th in rank. Roy sees that the engagement looks forced, and Yukina told him that because of it after graduation, she would not be allowed to touch a sword, so Roy thinks that Tim Townsend is jealous and probably wants to keep Yukina in captivity. He was in a hurry but wanted to remind her that the Sword Saint is designed for swordsmen, and he saw how many gave up due to lack of skills. Yukina said that people respect sword saints too much because she observed her grandmother for a long time and is convinced that even the sword saint was not the strongest at first. They become strong through daily work, and she is sure that the current sword saint also gained his strength through effort and will. When it comes to willpower, she will definitely surpass the sword saint and protect her country as a swordswoman. Roy saw that she spoke convincingly, so he decided to start training immediately. She was surprised that he himself initiated the sessions, and Roy said he would just help her a little. That meant a lot to Yukina. She willingly agreed to the training. Yukina began to ask him to train again tomorrow, but Roy refused because he had plans with Reena. Yukina decided to join, and while they were talking, Tim Townsend saw them behind the wall and burned with jealousy and hatred towards that fallen nobleman. Friends told him that Roy has a sister, Reena Level, who is known in middle school as the second best student. Tim decided to get rid of the pests in advance and planned to do something with Roy's sister to take revenge. Chapter 3. The next day, Reena asked Roy why there was someone else here when it was supposed to be just the two of them, and Yukina asked not to pay attention to her. Reena was previously dissatisfied, but was curious why Yukina was in uniform even on a day off, and Yukina replied that she has no casual clothes and is little interested in fashion. The uniform, and now they started their day off. Reena walked around, looked at interesting books, and pulled out. Roy showed her the new episode of the series she was waiting for, where there was a simplified version of a famous magical spell by Reena. Her enthusiasm surprised Yukina because she did not know if it was usual. Roy explained that actually it is once a month, and a small gift for her efforts. Yukina was embarrassed by Reena's unusual behavior. And Roy said that books are important for Reena because in childhood she was fragile and could not leave the room. Then Reena's world was limited to a small room, and she dreamed of seeing autumn colors. Roy showed her leaves from different seasons and drew pictures for her. He hoped she understood everything, and Reena often smiled thanks to the care of her brothers. It was then that Roy decided to do everything for her smile, and Reena began to read by herself and try to learn more about the outside world. Since then, Rain has become passionate about reading and paints amateur landscapes. Yukina said that he is truly a caring brother and officially called him legal. Roy asked her not to use the formal form of address, but she explained that when she calls him by name, it feels friendly. Roy said that he already considers them friends. Friends, Yukina told him that she actually never had friends, so she doesn't know how to behave with a friend. Roy recalled that she often sits alone, and she felt that he was mocking her. Roy assured her that he was not mocking her. He politely told her that he wants to be addressed by his name. Yukina gathered her courage. And call him Roy as a friend would. Roy was glad to be called that. She was friendly, and you also called her Yukina. Later, Reena asked both of you to carry some books and regretted making Yukina do it, but Yukina assured her that she was fine, although she was curious whether Reena would really read so many books. Reena said she would finish them in a month, and seeing how much Reena loves books, Yukina decided to share a book written by her grandmother, a swordswoman of the past, and hoped it would become for Reena-like. Yukina made sure she had memorized everything, and wanted to give it as an apology for interfering with her plans today. Reena turned to her brother to find out if it was really okay, and he said it was allowed because it is rare to have a chance to read something written by the sword master herself, so Reena decided and gave her brother everything she had. So that she could accept the book with respect and promise to take care of it, Roy was glad to see that Yukina trusted Reena with something that was originally meant to be read only by family members. When he returned after paying for other purchases, Reena was gone, so he asked Yukina where Reena had gone. Yukina replied that Reena just peeked into the next room, but suddenly, they heard Reena's voice asking someone to let her go. Roy and Yukina saw that the guy turned out to be Tim and was holding Reena's hand without her consent. He asked her to cooperate and said he had business with her brother, while Reena mocked him for choosing people when they were alone. This mockery hurt his pride, so he pushed Reena and called her as ill-mannered as her brother. Yukina caught Reena and checked if she was okay. Reena thanked her for the help. Then Tim called both of them, and they listened to what he had to say. Yukina demanded that he immediately apologize to Reena. Tim asked if he really needed to apologize to the sister of the deceased nobleman, which angered Yukina, and she decided to force him to apologize by force, but he reminded her that fights between students at school are forbidden, and they could. In the duel, I threw at them the emblem of their academy, but Tim knew that Yukina could not do that because it would cause her a lot of trouble, and Tim also noted that she was simply not destined to contradict him as her fiend. And at that very moment, the emblem of their academy fell right in front of Tim, and if Reena was a little upset, the other two were surprised, because the one who threw that emblem was none other than Roy, who wants to challenge Tim Senpai instead of Yukina. Later, a rumor about the upcoming duel quickly spread at school. Everyone doubted Raven's chances against Tim, the sixth in rank. Yukina told Roy that this was causing a big stir and crowds from both countries were gathering to watch the duel. Roy realized that Tim probably called his parents to brag about the victory, as overly confident boys do. Later, Roy sat in his room thinking about how to defeat Tim so that no one would suspect. Then his father came, and Roy asked him for help. Linus said he had heard about the duel and was initially surprised because he thought Roy was provoking an influential aristocrat to quit the academy, but it turned out the reason was different. Linus had also heard about Yukina and praised Roy for winning such a beauty as expected of him. Linus thought Roy did it because of Reena, but in reality, he acted for Yukina because he believed that if a high-ranking nobleman lost to a scoundrel, it would definitely break the engagement. Roy avoided this and said that was not the main reason, he was just irritated. Linus urged him to confess like a man, then Roy got to the point and told that he had called his father here. Linus seriously asked what the real problem was, and Roy explained that Yukina has a heavenly wolf eye, so if she sees that he fights poorly, his cover will be blown. Linus understood, but thought it might be possible to slash so fast that it wouldn't be noticed. Roy said that wouldn't work because everyone would notice something happened, and the fact that even she wouldn't notice would make the situation even more obvious, because few can slash so fast as to fool even a magical eye. Linus decided it was hopeless, and Roy asked him to come up with something because only he, as the best strategist, could do it. Linus was in a bind, so he had to think of something for his son and thought there might be one option. He told Roy that he could use another weapon from the book to win the match. He showed it to Roy, and Roy was not satisfied. Linus said that with his skills, it shouldn't be impossible. But Roy would have to wait until he gave the signal during the fight. If everything went according to plan, it could become a profitable matter, and now he was waiting for the day of the duel more than Roy himself. And on the day of the duel, Roy came to the arena and saw that everyone had gathered specifically to watch this fight. The match, the judge checked both and said that according to the rules, if someone is thrown out of the ring, found unconscious, or surrenders, they lose. Tim confirmed that the rules were fine, and they were acceptable to Roy as well. Roy was not sure that. He thinks that if he can buy Reena a bunch of books from the profit of this match, he will win, but he will not overdo it. Tim warned Roy to be ready to embarrass himself. But Roy just said that he also agrees with the rules of this duel. Tim immediately prepared his most powerful move, the Thunder of the Kingdom of Townsend, a magical sword technique that enhances basic moves and turns an ordinary sword into a magical blade, and Roy deliberately chose a weaker magical enhancement for his sword. Tim rushed. Roy jumped back to dodge, and he knows that even the best saber does not guarantee Tim victory. Tim thought he had the advantage and tried to catch Roy by surprise in the air, but Roy ended up at the edge of the arena and barely saved himself from falling. Tom increased the pressure and asked how much longer Roy would hold out, but Roy did not answer and simply turned from the side to the center. Tim tried to finish him off. Their swords clashed and Roy barely saved himself. Tim got angry because Roy was only defending all the time and demanded that Roy finally go on the attack. But Roy saw that everything was going according to Father's plan and thought about what Father would do next. Now he only had to fulfill his father's will to see what Gray Fox, the greatest strategist, was capable of. Meanwhile, Tim's father, the Duke of Townsend, wondered why his son was acting this way. The sixth-ranked fighter was fighting an unsuccessful nobleman, and with such skills, Tim did not even reach Yukina, who was sitting inside with Roy's sister and apparently was paying for Roy to stay there because he was struggling hard in the fight. Tim mocked Roy that he was still only defending and supposedly afraid to lose, and Roy teased that if Tim was sure of victory, he should finish the fight quickly. Otherwise, it would look like he was asking Roy to quit because he thought Roy could win. Roy thanked Tim for such an inspiring thought about him, but Tim had no intention of doing that. Tim began to deliver long horizontal strikes, but Roy was still dodging, and Tim told him to just surrender, because Roy saw that Tim's weakness was in his head. He was used to everything going smoothly until now, so his attacks were predictable, and Roy only had to wait for Father's signal to finish him off. At the same time, Linus Royce-Feather's lawyer approached the Duke of Townsend with his eldest son Liam, who was currently an assistant to the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Grand Duchy. Liam elegantly greeted the Duke, and Reena was surprised to see her older brother here and asked if he had any business with the Duke. Liam replied that he came here only to witness the fight and make sure the duel would have no diplomatic consequences, and also he wanted his brother Roy to win, and Reena was glad that Liam was also rooting for Roy. Linus said that he saw Yukina Crawford next to Duke Townsend, and she greeted him. Duke Townsend decided to apologize to Linus on behalf of his son for the attitude towards Linus's son, and Linus reassured that everything was fine because the Kingdom of Albios lives by the sword and respects a woman who wants to fight with a sword in Berlin of the Grand Duchy. Unlike the Townsend family, Duke Townsend was offended and began to say that Linus's legitimate son arrogantly thinks he can compare himself to his son, who holds 6th place in the academy. But Linus said that his son knows how to fight stronger opponents, so if the Duke's son does not show his best, the invitation of guests will backfire on him, and if the Duke's son loses to some unlucky nobleman. Linus does not know what will happen to the engagement. Yukina began to suspect that Roy is doing this for her, the parents of those who dueled argued. And then Duke Townsend asked Linus if he was really so confident in his son's victory. And if so, it would be quite uncharacteristic of him as a strategist. Linus said that this duel is a price for his son, so he decided to trust him, and is also sure that his son does not engage in fights he cannot win. Duke Townsend says that under such conditions he also believes in his son, but then Linus claims that Tim actually has no chance, and therefore he does not need to worry about Roy's defeat. He's so confident that he even bets money on Roy's victory, and when Duke Townsend heard this, he laughed and proudly said that his son will win. Reena and Liam tried to calm their father, but Linus told them not to interfere. After that, he staked his gold mine. Duke Townsend did not back down and decided to bet 5 wagons of gold ingots, but Linus laughed, saying that this cannot even be considered a bet, and it shows how little the Duke believes in his son's victory. Townsend changed his mind and bet 15 wagons of gold, and he himself ordered all the nobles behind to stand as witnesses so that no one would refuse what was said. Linus checked if everyone heard this. For some reason, this affected Duke Townsend, and he had a bad feeling. He still believes that a nobleman who lost status will not even be able to resist, and now everything depends on the outcome of this battle. Roy pretended that it was hard for him, and Tim was really suffering because the fight was gradually exhausting him. He did not understand why Roy was still standing, although barely keeping up. Then Roy said that in any case he will win this fight. Tim agreed and decided to go all in with the Townsend family's signature move, Thunder Cherry activated. Duke Townsend was confident in his son's victory, and Yukina saw that after activation Tim's attack power rose to stunning heights, and with one strike he could throw Roy out of the ring. Tim declared that he would end the duel with one strike, and Roy was ready to meet him head-on and also finish the match. Tim could not stand the Leval family because they were too arrogant due to having one sword saint in their family. Now they walked around carrying this pride as if it were their own. He called them all failed nobles protected by one woman, and now he would show Roy their place, and something inside Roy responded as if this mockery decided everything. Then he remembered his childhood. Once he asked his mother to show him her secret sword technique. She said it was not yet time because this technique turns damage into magic and directs it into the sword. Since it is a last resort move, she did not want to teach him. Roy asked what this technique was for. Then she replied that it was a sword technique for protecting the family. Roy now understands why she left this technique and did not pass it on to him then, because she did not want it to cause him great harm. It's like sacrificing yourself to protect others. Now that he is a sword saint, he knows he can use this sword without consequences, so he activated the secret sword flame. Linus gestured for him to win the match now. Roy's eyes were full of determination. He looked at Yukina and wanted to take revenge on Tim Townsend for his attitude towards her and for insulting his family. Roy rushed forward and said he would make Tim answer for everything he had done, and restraining himself, struck the sword into his torso. Ten was thrown back by Roy's powerful strike, and Roy ordered him to apologize to his loved ones for everything he had said. Ten found himself among the spectators right where his father was, and the match ended with Roy's victory. Linus praised Roy for winning this match, because it means their family will be safe for now, and Roy's back seemed reliable and strong. Yukina saw this and said that she herself would defeat him in the future, and Roy J. He was simply accepting her challenge when she was ready for him. It made you strive to be happy, and when he returned from the arena. Reena met him with a worried look. Roy boasted that he had just won 6th place and asked Reena if she liked it. Just then she hugged him and confessed that she was worried about him. She was afraid he would disappear like their mother, and that moment scared her a lot. She is glad he won and happy that he is safe. Roy assured his sister that he would be safe and thanked her for her care. Later, Liam went to ask father about the secret shard of the sword, because he never knew that mother left something like that. Linus told him that he was not suitable for this, because swords were Roy's specialty, and strategy was Lion's specialty. Everyone has their own strengths, and you need to focus on them. Now he decided to return, and after the father left, Liam remembered that father might. Sometimes it seems that everything he says or does is deliberate. Roy understands this, and Liam apologizes for bringing up this topic, and says that he is happy for Roy's victory, not only as a brother, but also as a person from the Grand Duchy, and explains that for him it matters that Roy defeated a nobleman from the Kingdom of Albios, and so he will do everything possible to transform the appearance of their home. He will also change the internal image of their father for the sake of their family. Roy was more than ready to support his brother, and Liam thanked him for this, then asked Roy to take his studies more seriously. During this, someone urgently reported to Liam that the Imperial Army of Gallia had invaded the border of Aldeo with a huge army of 100,000 people. Lion was worried because their army there numbered only 10,000, and he had to leave immediately. Roy also could not afford to rest because Aldeo now needs the Holy Sword. But he even liked it because he was tired of holding back so much. Roy transformed into a cloud and arrived at the border, and the Sword Saint dispelled boredom by defeating this army. The Kingdom of Albios is the land of swords, and the Kingdom of Lutetia is the land of magic. they turned talented people into warriors equal to 1,000 men, while the Empire of Gali relied on numerical superiority. Heavy magical armor and the most modern military devices make them invincible. However, Cloud suddenly appeared in the middle of the army and with one sword strike cut down several dozen enemies. For him, they were far from invincible, and at the very moment the sword appeared, the army fell into chaos. Everyone thought that together they could at least handle one. The Sword Saint directly rushed at their captain and made it clear that he did not come to play, and the rest of the army continued shooting from magical rifles and tried to overwhelm him with fire, but Cloud dealt with them one by one. He headed to their base. There Cloud encountered General Egon of the Imperial Army, who wanted a duel with the White Sword Saint Cloud. The White Sword Saint Cloud requested a one-strike duel because he had no time to waste. The general was actually trying to buy time so that others could escape. Cloud asked why he was risking his life like that. Egon replied that it was His Majesty's order. Egon and Cloud clenched their swords and the atmosphere changed. Egon struck first. Cloud quickly dodged and retreated to counterattack. Before Egon could notice, Cloudsword had already stabbed his sword into his armor, and Cloud made it clear that Egon was no match for him. But it was not the end, because Egon had planned to sacrifice himself from the very beginning. He came here with explosives tied to his body to take down the Sword Saint and die with him. But even after he pulled the trigger, nothing happened, because Cloud was not so short-sighted and had already disarmed the explosives. It was the end for Egon, even in his last breath. He prayed for the glory of the Gallia Empire. When Cloud ended this war, he stood in the rain and wondered how long it would last. Later, Roy returned home, and Renev asked him why he had been disappointed in her lately. He asked where the sudden question came from. She just asked if he missed the days when beauties would wake him up. Roy replied that he would rather choose rest than good looks. She easily believed him, and they both went to school. When Roy arrived at school, he saw Yukina, and she said they hadn't seen each other for a long time. Roy recalled that he had indeed been absent because he had to fight an army of 100,000 alone, and although he could handle it without problems, here he was nervous because of one classmate. Now they were both going to class, but Yukina asked him to practice a little because she wanted to show him something. Roy was interested and went to watch the video. Look, Yukina showed him her new cursed sword technique, Ice Flower. Roy felt the coldness from her technique but pretended to be tough as if everything was fine. When they were about to start training, she asked him not to hold back. Roy asked her to behave more gently. She approached him and made the first move, and this time Yukina's moves were more precise and refined, as if she had been training a lot lately. He himself embraced us through her usual theory of attack. But this time she just stood silently, and he wondered what was happening with her unusual fighting style. He asked if she was resting, and she left it to his imagination. Roy decided to raise the stakes and test it, suddenly attacking Yukina and forcing him to drop his sword. Roy said he was impressed by her achievements, and she was pleased to hear it. Roy noticed that lately she has been working more on defense. She would like to continue working on both together. Later, when they were sitting, Roy praised her for exercising regularly. Then he asked her what was happening at home. She was a little worried whether the duel with Tim had changed anything in her life, and Yukina asked if he was worried about it. Roy admitted that he had thought about it too, and she said that the engagement was broken, so now she was free, could finish the academy and fulfill her dream of becoming a sword saint, and was glad that now she could follow in her grandmother's footsteps and strive for greatness. And for all this, she had to thank Roy, because he did it. She looked at him in a new way when he accepted the challenge from the elder to help her, and began to respect his help. She promised never to give up. Roy thought it would be too much of an acknowledgement, and then she asked him to support her from now on. Roy nodded at her request, then she asked him to explain how the fire trick he showed earlier worked. Roy blushed at the mention of it. She insisted again, but he said it was a secret technique he could not reveal, hearing what she just said. People around called him stingy for keeping such a good thing to himself. Roy was glad to see that she at least now enjoyed life, but he himself meanwhile lived an ordinary life. Some began to follow him because they believed Roy level could become a problem for their plans, and they needed to keep everything under control for their majesty. Sutton Roy was to meet another beauty, at Sanier, a prodigy of fire magic and a notorious troublemaker, who since then very much wanted to meet Roy as soon as she heard about his duel, and planned to invite him on a date. Now let's go back a little in time, when Reena was practicing control over her magical power, and she maintained flawless magic of disbelief. This surprised others in the training hall, and they considered her the second best in their high school. At school, teachers believed she had a bright future. Her smiles won over many, and in the shadow behind her watched one of the spies of the Hala Empire, and when he was about to note Rana's actions in a journal, Roy suddenly caught him. He silenced her to keep quiet. She tried to break free using magic, but Roy discreetly handled it. He ordered the spy to be silent because he did not want anyone to notice, and eventually dealt with that spy. He also cast a strong magic circle to deal with other spies around, and they could only think that it was the magic circle of a great sage after seeing how Roy used magic. But unfortunately, they will not live to tell about it. After cleaning up the mess, Roy checked their belongings, found information about the students, and discovered that they had infiltrated the academy disguised as merchants. If there are more such spies there, it could cause problems, because it means that the Empire's rats skillfully blended in with the people. Roy used puppet magic, created several of his own people, and sent them simultaneously to gather information from different places. Roy recalls that 5 years ago Reena defeated the Empire's army and showed that she could become a problem for them. The Empire sought Reno's power because she proved that the apostles of the star spirits, mentioned only in some texts, were real. These apostles had magic from the entire continent flowing through their star veins, granting them boundless power, and those apostles turned out to be Roy and his sister, who were found by two people searching for the cause of the Empire army's sudden disappearance. But Roy stopped them because it could pressure his sister Reena, and he preferred to take on both roles himself. The two were surprised because it was impossible for one person to simultaneously play both the swordsman and the great sage. The woman had an interesting idea. She decided to try and began training Roy in both magic and swordsmanship. He shed much blood and sweat throughout the training, and it turned out that even those two underestimated apostles of the star spirits. Roy accidentally trained and transformed simultaneously into a synchronizer of the sword and the great sage, moreover receiving as a gift a bottomless source of magical power, and Reena does not realize her value, so she cannot simply be given to the Empire. Now he arrived at his estate, Eclipse Identity, in the Empire of Lutetia on business. He wanted to stay at the academy a little longer, but he had no time and had to come here. He tried to convince his father to allow him to quit the academy, but Linus wanted him to stay and continue studying. Roy thought that if he did not have to spend so much time at the academy, everything would be simpler. Just then he was greeted by the master of wind magic, the 7th of the 12 heavenly magicians, and he was one of the few who knew who Roy was. Roy wondered why he was called here so quickly. And Vela replied that he was not so free either. Valera was the best informant in the Three Kingdoms and knew how to discreetly infiltrate empires when needed. Rory knew that Vela was the only person on the entire continent busier than him, and now he began to talk about the main topic for which he called Roy. He informed Roy that the Empire was preparing an unprecedented large-scale operation. Roy asked when it would take place. Viller only guessed for now, and the unit in this operation would be the Royal Imperial Guard, which explains the scale of the mission. Roy realized that the Emperor of the Gallian Empire must be desperately striving for success now. Valor explained that even the recent invasions with 100,000 soldiers were only to gather intelligence about the enemy. Roy found this funny, but Valor said more confidently that this meant their determination to act fully, and for Roy as the great sage of Eclipse the mission remains unchanged. It is to repel them. Valor was glad to hear this, but was convinced that the Empire of Gallia was not stupid, and no matter how many troops Eclipse mobilized, he would not be able to break through them. Valor noted that this operation has a hidden purpose. It is written in a cipher that he received here. He has not yet deciphered it, and it seems that only higher ranks understand these letters. Although this may be just caution, because they cannot afford a mistake, Valor had a different opinion. He agreed that it could be a distraction, and was impressed by his cleverness. Eclipse decided to be ready for anything, and Valor advised him to remain prepared as a sage. Then Valor entrusted himself with intelligence gathering, and assigned Eclipse to fight outside, and before leaving. He asked Eclipse if he had thought about an apprentice. Eclipse did not want to take an apprentice, but Valor was sure that Eclipse could be a good teacher, and when Eclipse said he was busy with his own affairs, Valor simply asked if that was why Eclipse sent puppets to mingle with people. Valor agreed to everything, as long as Eclipse protected the kingdom of Lutetia. Regarding apprenticeship, Valor had a certain person in mind, so he asked Eclipse to inform him if Eclipse changed his mind. Eclipse decided to entrust the acquaintance with that potential apprentice to Valor. After this, he returned to the academy, lay on the grass on his back, and enjoyed the beautiful day. This time Yukina also just left him lying there, finally respecting his hobby, and the conversation with Valor showed that he would become busier from now on. Outside, Roy wanted to rest for a few more minutes in peace and simply enjoy the fresh air and clear blue sky. Suddenly, a huge water bubble flew towards him from somewhere, and Roy quickly turned around to protect the drawing he was working on from water splashes. He did not understand what had just happened. Then a beauty appeared from the water, said she had mixed things up again a little, and apologized to him, and introduced herself as Sunny or Annette, magical arts. Suddenly, the beautiful girl Annette simply invited him on a date. Her uniform only added to her beauty. Roy turned around and handed her his handkerchief. She thought such a famous man would be kind. Then Roy asked what she had meant earlier. But suddenly she asked him to start training together with her, and seeing her here, Roy remembered that magic use was forbidden in the academy because of that magazine, since she had blown up part of the academy and lost control over magic. Then Annette noticed the drawing in his hand and called it special, and Roy was confused because he knew he was bad at it. She decided to help him a little and correct his drawing. After that, she explained which parts of his drawing she had improved. Roy now understood it better, and she was good at it because she often did it in childhood. Now she had a sheet for now. So she walked away, hoping to approach him later in the cafeteria. She was selling croquettes, and Annette Sari actually did not go to the cafeteria because he brought food from home. When Roy was just about to go eat peacefully, Annette asked him to buy the last 2 croquettes so she could finish her work. And our guy finally bought them to help her. She thanked him for the help there, and during the walk eventually asked for 1 croquette. Roy said that after that he would have dinner, so he was going to save it. She started making a scene that everyone has to share, and Roy decided he could give in because she helped him withdraw money yesterday, so she got a tasty croquette for free and enjoyed it wholeheartedly. Now Roy asked her why she sells croquettes. She replied that she has to do so because her family lives in poverty. The son of your family is known as a master of fire magic in the Ludish Empire, but 12 years ago, when her grandfather died, the decline began, and a few years ago her parents died. She cannot just be sad because she has 3 younger brothers and 2 sisters to feed. Therefore, as the 23rd head of the family, she has to work a lot. She survived days when she even thought about selling her body, and it was then that she met a suspicious man who noticed her talent and, with state support, helped her enter the academy. After that, she was very happy that the family would survive. Roy thought that this suspicious man might be Viller, and Annette was the student he mentioned. Annette said that the support only covers her school, so she still needs to raise money. Roy asked if the mage rank would not allow her to support herself, and she replied that in their family fire magic is famous, so she wants to restore the lineage as a fire mage, and besides, she aspires to become a great sage. She said that once she saw the magic of the current great sage, and everyone who saw it was enchanted. She wanted her fire magic to enchant people the same way, and if it ever inspires even one child, she will be happy. But because she cannot control her magic, she caused the academy a lot of problems. That is why magic is forbidden in the academy. Now she only knows how to release simple uncontrolled flames, and even if she trains secretly, she will not be able to catch up with others in the academy. So now she cannot become a mage. Roy noticed a slight sadness on her face. The next day, his sister came to wake him up for lunch and had already prepared water and something to eat for him, then went to school, and Roy remembered that he had a pleasant memory in a dream about the day when everything began. He was driven by the desire to protect his fragile sister. As a result, he became a holy swordsman and a sage, and Annette seems to feel the same, believing that as the older sister she must protect her family. He learned that Annette's grandfather died in a battle organized by Roy's father 12 years ago, so the decline of your family was caused by the royal family, and now that Roy understood this, he must act before it's too late. It is not time to be a holy swordsman or a great sage, but time to become Roy level, who will decide everything once and for all. Later at school, he found Annette everywhere. There were splashes of water on the ground, and when she noticed, she asked him if he was trying to distract her. Roy asked how she noticed him, and she replied that she was simply sensitive to the environment. After that, Roy handed her a towel to dry herself. Annette thinks he considers her stupid because she used water magic and tried to protect herself from her own magic, but she just wants to overcome the fear of failure, and Roy sensed where she was heading. No wonder she was crying in her seat. Roy told her that growth requires struggle, but she thought about it differently. Roy actually wanted her to stay strong because she has strong magic and talent, but she is still inexperienced, so he decided to show her one place and asked her to stop sulking and follow him for now. He leads her by the hand and thinks about how much she had to go through to become a mage, but her own powers might overwhelm her. He doubts that the academy can provide a place where she would be comfortable using magic, and asking Annette to wait is almost like a sentence, given her circumstances. Roy brought her to a mysterious place. She did not know where they were now. Everything around was brightly glowing with magic. Then Roy asked her to try to use magic on that tree. She was afraid the tree would burn, but Roy reassured her, saying that everything was fine and that he would handle it if something happened. She directed a huge fiery ball at him, and sending it forward, was afraid that something bad would happen now. Roy asked her to look ahead, and she saw that the trees were absorbing the magic of the fireball. Roy explained that this place, where magic flows, is the cluster point starving, and even the trees here are blessed with magic and extremely resilient. They do not burn easily, and if they catch fire, they extinguish instantly. Ancient heroes once trained here, and now this will be the perfect place for her training. It was interesting how he found this place. Roy simply said that he stumbled upon it by accident while looking for a good view, and most importantly, here she can use magic as much as she wants and practice to her heart's content. So he asked that after training she teach him to draw again as payment, because free things were risky. And thanked him for helping her so much. But that man had something else he needed to tell her. He said that Anne's grandfather's death happened because of her father. Annette calmly replied that she already knew, because her grandfather could have not gone on that mission he was assigned, but went of his own free will, so blaming someone would be disrespectful to him, and Roy understands what she means. Besides, she was glad to see that he cared about her. But now she is fine thanks to him. Therefore, she will definitely become one of the top 10 sorceresses in the world and repay Royce many times over for the favor. Roy knew she was not lying, and in the end everything happened as Valor planned. Meanwhile, Valor was torturing a man named Avraham to make him reveal what this secret cipher meant, but Avraham endured and said nothing. He said it would be better to kill him, and Valor begged him to at least think about his wife and just teach him to read the cipher. And this led to his death because of the value. Now Valor did not know where to go next when he heard Avraham's wife calling him, and Valor secretly wanted to go out and take care of her without being exposed, but suddenly he remembered Eclipse's warning not to harm unrelated civilians. Wyler barely moved away from her and quickly left like the wind because he did not want to have a great sage as an enemy. Now they would have to rely on the decoding team, and after a few days he managed to get that man to decode the letter. The man in the hood asked where Valor got this code from. He replied that he had connections. The man said it was a top-level cipher and could only be used under certain conditions. Valor asked to quickly reveal everything, and the man replied that he had not found an exact date, but the code spoke of a plan to deploy a force of 400,000 soldiers for simultaneous attacks on the kingdoms of Albios and Lutetia, but that was not all. They really planned to sacrifice these 400,000 people to capture the land of the Grand Duchy, the foundation of the alliance of 3 countries, and Wyler was shocked because Roy lived there. Now he understood that these people took advantage of the Kraken chaos to infiltrate the duchy with their people, and he could not believe that the Halia Empire could even control monsters. It seems they were already trapped by the Empire, so he had to quickly inform the Great Sage about this while Roy rested under the tree. Later, during school years, Yukina told Roy about the rivalry between the swordsmen and wizards departments, and he understood it because the kingdoms of Albios and Lutetia were once enemies, and although they formed an alliance, not all citizens agreed. Yukina added that there were rumors that he was closely communicating with a student from the wizards department and even showed her the training ground. Roy was surprised that she found out about this, and now she also wanted to see that ground. Moreover, she even knew that the training ground was called the Gathering Point of Star Veins. She learned about this when Annette started talking over a cup of tea with snacks, and now she understood that such a place was rare and hard to find in historical sources. Roy realized that she probably found out about this place in the library, so he would be able to easily find a way out, and refused to clarify this, citing a rare book that he had at home. Yukina agreed and asked to arrange a duel today for practice, but Roy already had other plans. She did not let him refuse, teased him, and asked if he was free to show her the training places, although he could not spar with her, and Roy could not just say no when she behaved like that. He began training with her in the backyard, and at that moment Annette ran up and hurriedly called them both because a rare phantom beast had escaped from the academy. A reward is given for finding it. Yukina was impressed by the reward, but Roy considered it a hassle and only wished Annette luck in her search. Annette stopped. She told them that she no longer wanted to get that reward. Money, Roy had seen this in advance, and now they were discussing how to lure that beast to them instead of combing through the academy. Yukina knew how to do it. Did she know what that beast's favorite food was, and decided to take a lot of it and just sit in the dining hall, waiting for the beast to appear. Roy couldn't help but ask why Annette was eating their bait, and she replied that it was necessary to look natural. Soon black smoke passed through their legs, and the phantom beast appeared and tried to take its favorite from the film. Fruit, Roy tried to catch it, but the beast. Someone managed to slip away, and the food from the table got on Annette and Yukina's uniforms, so Yukina thought it would be better for them to change now. Roy decided to meet them later and went after the beast. He knew the beast must be hungry, so something nearby was eating. Following the tracks, after a few minutes he finally tried to trace where the beast had gone, into some room. Exactly where Yukina and Annette were changing. Roy was caught off guard. Annette shouted at him to stop spying on her. Roy said the beast was nearby, and Annette only heard a roar, so she began looking for the beast around. She wanted to follow, but Yukina reminded her to get dressed first. When they were busy, the beast was found by another student, and because of this she lost the chance to receive a monetary reward. After Roy got out of here, he decided to go home and put his puppet in his place. He transformed into the great sage Eclipse and went to Valor to find out why he was summoned, but to his surprise, Valor was wounded and explained that he was exposed during a mission. Eclipse asked about the wound because it was uncharacteristic for him, and Valor replied that he tried to break through the defense of the Empire of Gallia to crack the code. The Empire of Gallia plans an invasion with forces of 400,000 soldiers on Albios and Lutetia, and their real goal is the Grand Duchy. Roy asked why, and was told that Gallia seeks to strike the weakest of the three empires, which is the center of the alliance, to break this alliance. Valor wanted to help Eclipse, but the scale of the military grouping of the Empire of Gallia was too large for him to handle. Eclipse doubted whether King Lutixio would allow him to handle the Empire of Gallia's unit alone, and the Kingdom of Albios could not rely only on the Holy Swords and planned to send other of its best knights to battle. But Eclipse made it clear that he himself would face the entire army, and the Sword Saint would defend the Grand Duchy. Roy thought this could work because he is a specialist in fighting crowds, but he was not sure if the king would allow it because it could leave them vulnerable without reinforcements, so Roy decided not to tell the king and act alone. This scared Valor because it is a national crisis, and Eclipse explained that this is exactly why he is doing this, because appealing to the king would take too much time, so he wants Valor to go to the Kingdom of Albios and tell them about this plan. Then Valor asked Eclipse if he was sure he would go alone against 400,000, and Eclipse replied that this is the essence of the great sage. He decided to entrust this to Eclipse, went to report the plan to the king, and left everything else to Eclipse. Now Eclipse wanted to immediately get involved in intrigues to resolve this situation. He returned to the room in the academy to think everything over, because if their main goal is the Grand Duchy, then the first attack here will be on the academy, and according to Valor, he will warn the Grand Duchy on the way, so others should have already informed Roy. It was then that his sister came urgently to say that their city was about to be attacked, and Roy asked about the situation at the academy. To which she replied that the students are in complete despair, and now there is a conflict between those who want to flee and those who are ready to fight. Roy knows that the Empire of Gallia sought to provoke this conflict, and he should set out to take measures. Reena also announced that she would return to defend the academy, and he would return in a few days. The rest of the world is still in the same situation as the rest of the world. The rest of the world is still in the same situation as the rest of the world. The rest of the world is still in the same situation as the rest of the world. The rest of the world is still in the same situation. The rest of the world is still in the same situation. The rest of the world is still in the same situation. The rest of the world is still in the same situation. The rest of the world is still in the same situation. The rest of the world is still in the same situation. The rest of the world is still in the same situation. The rest of the world is still in the same situation. Later the academy announced a plan to build a barricade, but the third-year students were absent, and Roy thought their presence would not change anything. He was packing a bag to prepare and told Reena that they needed to inform their father. The father decided it was faster to deliver the message themselves than to wait for a rider from the capital. Reena noted that if both of them now go home, it would seem as if the legal family is fleeing. Roy did not care what others thought, but Reena was against it and wanted to stay to show that the legal family puts the country first. Roy did not expect such opposition from her. She said that this time she would not go with him for the sake of the family, and Roy became worried, because although Rin is capable and useful in battle, he does not want her to stay in such a dangerous place and doubts whether this is not his selfishness. He cannot bear the thought that she is in danger, so out of anxiety he might have disregarded her wishes. He cannot do otherwise, because Rin is more precious to Roy than anything else and he wants her to be happy, and if something happens to her, Roy would lose his mind and abandon everything to protect her. Rin brought him back from his thoughts. She asked him to trust her, because she wants to express her opinion and protect the legitimate family, so she will take full responsibility for her decisions herself. After that she apologized and left. Yukina heard everything from outside and joked that Roy's younger sister is going through a rebellious phase. Roy felt a little strange, because he had not yet managed to understand how she had already left his embrace, and Yukina told him that he is just a caring brother. Roy asked her if she would stay in his well, and she nodded that she must stay here to honor the pact of the three peoples and protect her homeland. Roy found this worthy, but he said that since they are only students, they must realize that they are choosing between senseless death and escape, so he considers escape a justified strategy. You, driven by greed, say that this may be so, and many students have already made such a decision. She will not flee just because the enemy is strong, because it would hurt her pride as a person who strives to become a sword master. Roy saw her determination, and she promised to protect Rin so that he could leave her with Yukina. Roy would like both to escape, and now without delay he will bring the father here to lead everyone, and asked her if she could continue to fight and not give up. And she confidently boasted that she represents her kingdom and will defend this place to the end. We note that something, a sword, speaks. She smiled and said that she will still become a future swordswoman, and Roy thinks that if she is so determined, he will not stop her, but will be grateful if she does not overdo it. He was already about to leave, but Yukina wanted to ask him something and asked Roy if he would also return to you. Here Roy declared that he would definitely protect everyone and everything Yukina wants to protect. Therefore, he will definitely return. Yukina was satisfied and expected his return. Later, Roy teleported to the battlefield. The field where there was an army of 400,000 people, and this time he cannot afford to hold back. The army of the Hala Empire was invading everywhere. Even small villages on their path, they devastated and attacked the peaceful residents of Egan, who could not even defend themselves. While they were killing people, Eclipse was watching their actions and hurrying to the place, but it would be difficult for him to reach the crowd of 400,000 people, so he cannot waste time here because this army was only a distraction. Eclipse exerted himself, using a spatial attack void magic attack to precisely neutralize as many as possible. A few hours ago he talked with his father. Learning about the situation, Linus did not doubt that the Hallian Empire was doing everything possible. He asked if Reena was still at the academy. Father agreed and explained that if both members of their family left the academy, it would cause unwanted rumors. Now Linus showed on the map that the academy was the last stronghold in defending the capital, and it was difficult to stop the fight once it had started. Roy hoped that the academy would be safe, after which Linus inquired if he had grown to love the academy so much. Roy said that usually people become attached to places where they live for a long time, and Linus asked Roy if he had ever wondered why Linus kept him at the academy. Linus replied that the point was that both during war and peace, killing remains killing, and the one who kills is a killer. 12 years ago, Linus learned this from his own experience during the war when there was no other choice but to fight, and it was the mind that distinguished them from beasts. Now Roy was almost finished casting his sword. He uttered a spell, thinking about his father's words, that it was good that Roy had a reason to fight. Roy said that he was fighting for his family, but Linus considered that reason too petty, and the real reason for Roy should be to protect the people of all three nations. We wanted Roy to see and observe students from other countries and understand that they are not strangers, but the same kind of people. The carefree days that Roy spent, he had to protect not only for himself but for everyone, and as a strong one, he was responsible for guarding everything even at the cost of his life. So now Roy had to begin the end of this war as Eclipse, the great dark sage, and it was his desire to protect others that distinguished him from a murderous monster. Lannis advised Roy never to forget that a mechanism, without a purpose, easily breaks, and life at the academy would heal his mind in times of chaos and show what truly needs to be protected. He should not protect just because it was imposed on him, but Roy must protect because he chose it himself. Roy made a huge divine blade out of metal and strike it down on the entire army of the Gallia Empire. They do not believe that such a monster exists, while Roy simply destroyed them and immediately took on the rest. The soldiers began to fear him and retreated. Rory partially understands what father meant. Even when he was exterminating Imperial soldiers, it barely touched his soul, but the thought of enemies advancing on the academy made him uneasy. After destroying all the enemies here, Rory used teleportation magic and moved to the next point to reach the academy faster. He transformed into Sword Sync Cloud and reached the battlefield of the Kingdom of Albios on foot, because teleportation here was only possible for great sages, and there were people everywhere, so he could not risk it, now after dealing with the device. He thought that the infiltration team might not yet know about their defeat. So he needed to get to the academy as quickly as possible and deal with them. Acting quickly was only possible because the king values the trinational alliance and the truth that the power of the sword depends on who wields it, so the king's understanding helped him a lot. Roy ran to the academy with all his might to get there as soon as possible. When they were at the academy, Yukina was next to Reena, and they saw that only a few students remained here resisting, and Reena was glad that Yukina stayed. She replied that she came because of her price and determination, yet it is reassuring that she is here. Yukina looked around with her magical eyes, felt that something was wrong here, so she jumped down and warned Reena that it would get cold here. Yukina released her magical sword, Ice Flower Flash, around her. As she expected, her icy strike revealed a monster that becomes invisible. Reena and Yukina were surprised to see Tsuihou here, and she recalled that the books described him as a monster that imitates snakes and camouflages with its smoke. Yukina rushed to stop its movements, but she was hindered by an Imperial soldier on the back of that monster. She ordered Rinnet to immediately send an alarm signal, and she obeyed the order. Others did not understand why the Imperial army was cooperating with monsters. Then Yukina does notice something breaking through the barrier and approaching their academy from the other side. She realized that the Imperial army had surrounded them, bringing long-range magical weapons for shooting from afar. The students were confused by the unexpected attacks, and Yukina ordered them not to panic and to focus on stopping them. March said that if they break through here, the next target would be the capital, so only they can delay the enemy here and protect the country. Yukina's words ignited courage among all the students, and she went to the front line. Yukina planned to meet them and stop them from breaking through the barrier, because if they get inside, everything would be in vain. The Imperial army noticed Yukina rushing at them, started shooting, and she froze the bullets with her ice slash and easily killed several knights. She said that the students of the Glass Rain Academy should not be underestimated just because of their status. Soldiers took turns aiming at her, and Yukina constantly read their movements with her magical eyes, so the Imperial soldiers standing before her retreated. Yukina sighed with relief for a moment, but suddenly the sirens blared again. She looked around and saw that 3 more Tsuihou monsters were approaching from the other side of the academy, and this worried her because it was difficult to stop even one of them. They attacked and the students were only desperately fighting them, but it was not enough. Yukina remembered that the enemy was targeting all the entrances of the academy, and if the bombardments were allowed to continue, the protective magical barrier would soon not hold. She did not know what to do. At that moment, a large fireball hit the squad of soldiers and dealt great damage to the enemy, and this spell was cast by Annette herself, who called Yukina to immediately enter the academy. Annette wanted to stop these bombardments with her magic and prove that she was no longer a burden, the fact that she managed to control her magic. Now her powers meant that she no longer needed to hold back as before. A soldier of the Imperial army began to retreat under the pressure of Annette's fire, and she said that she would once again inscribe the Sunnier family name in history. Several Imperial soldiers decided to stage a sneaky close-range attack, and Yukina engaged in hand-to-hand combat. She quickly ordered the others not to let the soldiers advance further. It turned out to be a tough fight for the students, but tides returned immediately. Reena entered the fight with her binding magic, but missed one soldier who aimed directly at Annette. Just in time, that soldier was killed by an explosive magical strike that drew everyone's attention, and they saw who had. The attacker turned out to be Royce's father, Vanest Level. He apologized to Reena for being late and said that now that he had arrived, they would cause trouble for those Imperial armies and knights. Linus surveyed the battlefield and began to think about how to deal with these enemies. He ordered the arsenal unit to take position and start shooting magical bullets at the enemy, and Reena noticed these rifles of the Imperial army and became interested in how her father got them. Linus said that they should take everything that comes their way, even pick up the Imperial army's weapons and use them without hesitation against it for the sake of the country. His plan slightly raised the morale of the other students, and Yukina noticed that she felt relieved because the greatest strategist of the 3 kingdoms was with them, and Linus added that other lords would soon start acting too, so until reinforcements arrive, they need to buy time, and that would be enough for victory. But she hesitated because the students were suffering heavy losses every minute, and the enemy was sending beasts to complicate the fight. Linus watched how the students fought, and he felt sorry. He called all the young warriors and declared that this was not a personal battle, not one where swords and magic are combined to enhance power, so the sword-wielding students began asking the mages to cover them. And only this small change gave a great result in the fight against the knights. The students began to gain the advantage on the battlefield, and the commander of the Imperial Army unit observed this from afar. He did not expect ordinary students to become such a problem, and one of the knights reported that the academy was currently led by a person of baronial rank. The leader knows at what level Linus is, the best strategist of the 3 kingdoms, so this explains the change in their dynamics. He ordered the knights to bring his magical armor. Because he decided to go to the front line himself. At the same time, one of the fighters of the Empire's special unit Hala approached and offered help, but the unit commander refused and said he could handle it himself, so the person decided to check if the commander would keep his word. Linus saw and recognized the enemy unit commander, known as the hero of the Southern Front. Bachstein and Backstein declared that they would destroy anyone who stood in their way, so it was better for them to clear the path themselves. Bachstein activated his magical sword technique, the explosive fire sword, and immediately destroyed several students, and also managed to pierce a hole through. He broke through the wall and entered the academy. Linus himself met him at the entrance. They exchanged unpleasant greetings, and Backstein went on a direct attack. And Yukina Crawford blocked me. Backstein was impressed by the student who fought so fast, and noticed her magical eyes that could cause trouble, so he asked Yukina to step back, because his main target was the man behind her, but Yukina appreciated the concern and said that retreat was not even an option here. She delivered a cold strike with an ice sword, and Backstein deflected it with his explosive sword. Yukina kept throwing ice attacks into those explosions until it created a huge. She used smoke to get closer to Backstein, because her magical eyes saw everything clearly. Backstein somehow blocked her attacks, and during this clash he noticed her. She will feel weakness and realize that she cannot use the magic sword and her eyes at the same time. Backstein knows she is just an inexperienced girl, so before she becomes a problem for the Galia Empire, he will kill her right here for the sake of the Empire. He intended to attack and kill her along with Linus Labe. But just then he felt something and suddenly changed his mind, saying goodbye to Yukina. He began to retreat, and when she asked if he was running away, behind the scenes they only noted that now everything had changed, so if he leaves, a real bloody massacre will begin at the academy. At that moment, a large wolf monster with a pack burst through the walls, and it seemed the slaughter was about to begin. The beginning, there were more monsters throughout the academy than could be counted, and Yukina and Linus did not know how this was possible. Linus said there must be a demon clan nearby controlling them. Yukina was surprised because the clan was considered exterminated, and Linus suggested that the clan was somehow resurrected, possibly by the Galia Empire, and if there is a clan member here, stopping him will make the monsters disappear. Yukina took responsibility to hold these monsters here and asked Linus to go look for the demon. Linus set out. After telling her to be careful, and during the search for that demon clan member, he noticed that the monsters were also disturbing other students. Linus struck the monster, attacking the girl with a dagger, and told her to quickly climb to a higher place. When he himself was almost attacked, Reena protected her father with wind magic, said she would manage, and asked her father to play his role and search for that demon. Lena's was worried because Renee's whirlwind protected against people, not monsters, so he told her to retreat, but Reena refused because she also wanted to fight to protect others. The wolf monster overcame her wind vortex and was about to tear her apart with its claws. And Reena knew that if they defeated her now, these monsters would hurt her father and everyone else. She could simply not allow this to happen under any circumstances. So Rin released a burst of magic to destroy the monster even for a moment. After that, she had no strength left, and Linus held her in his arms. While the monster was preparing to attack again, it was protected by Yukina, who arrived at the last moment, otherwise they would have already died. Yukina struggled to hold back the wolf. One of its paws hit her and threw her against the wall. She sustained serious injuries. Her left hand barely worked due to severe pain, so in this situation she could rely only on her right hand. After she was hit, the monster was barely restrained by her magic, but there was no time to rest. Because 3 more wolf monsters surrounded her in a second, Yukina could not afford to give up, so she raised her sword and fought to the last to win every second and protect this place as a representative of her kingdom. At that moment she saw a miracle when the wolf-like monsters were beheaded with a single clean strike by none other than the Sword Saint, who came just in time to save her. Cloud apologized to Yukina for being a little late. Now that he had arrived, everything would be fine. Meanwhile, the demon controlling the monsters ordered them to aim at the swordsman and at Yukina, whom he was quickly carrying, and asked her to hold on tightly to him, after which he himself jumped down from the wall and stared intently at the enemies. Even before he stepped on the ground, he had already killed several beasts. Cloud continued to push forward until he found out who was behind the monsters, and the demon did not even flinch when he was exposed. He introduced himself as crawling from the demon tribe and had his reasons to work with the Halia Empire. Cloud asked what the tribe could gain from such cooperation, but Crawling refused to answer. He did not care what would happen to the miserable people, and Cloud was not satisfied with that answer, so before killing Crawling, he asked how he had survived thousands of years after the demons were destroyed. Crawling had just claimed that he disappeared in time but was actually not killed, and it seemed no one feared his terror anymore, so he would start spreading his fear with the sword personally. Cloud took Yukina away from there to a safe place, and meanwhile King Lime was following him with his magnum opus. Dragon Knight Fafnir. Yukina did not expect that such a powerful being would be controlled by someone, but Cloud was not worried at all and attacked Krogla the moment he saw it. He opened and stabbed him with the blade. Krolvine, seriously injured, cursed him. Then the attack Cloud of the Dragon Knight, and he somehow managed to deflect it with his sword. Cloud thought about when he last held a sword with both hands, because Kralvian and Draghi were attacking him at the same time here. He would have to fight and block both simultaneously. Cloud dodged the Dragon Knight's strike and noticed that his strength was intimidating. It was then that Backstein arrived and joined the fight, and Cloud was deflecting both of them, holding the sword with both hands. Cloud easily hit Backstein with a clean strike and told him to stop this futile struggle, but Backstein was not going to give up even in his last breath. Cloud did not understand why the knights in the Galia Empire were so relentless, and the fight continued, with him alone fighting two strong warriors. And as if that was not enough, other Imperial soldiers also joined the fight and started shooting at him, which caught Cloud by surprise. But he reflexively deflected everything thrown at him. Cloud continued fighting the opponents, dodging bullets and maintaining precise footwork, while the Imperial soldiers thought they had a chance because even Swordsint was not sure he was invulnerable. Backstein realized that although their main target was the Grand Duchy, the king would value the head of the Sword Saint more, so he ordered the entire army to simultaneously attack the Sword Saint Cloud and break his winning streak. Cloud did not falter, no matter how many rushed at him, and he had to admit that they had gained spirits, but even that was in vain. The list, and as a farewell, Cloud decided to show them his demonic sword. The Cloud dealt a terrible blow to the enemy army, and Backstein looked back at them with a hint of fear, but felt no changes and doubted that the demonic sword of the Sword Saint had dulled. But suddenly everyone felt a force, like an earthquake caused by a rupture in space and time, and within seconds the entire army was destroyed by a Cloud with a single strike. Cloud knew how dangerous this sword mastery was, so he always tried not to use it recklessly, and the power behind it made even enemies wonder who he really was, because a person could not have such strength, and when they did not know who the White Swordsman was, Cloud answered them with questions. Guardian of the Kingdom of Albios. Meanwhile, Yukina observed the entire clash with her magical eyes. Watching every moment, Cloud's sword had already finished, so he apologized and said he had to report to His Majesty. Everything happened so fast that the Academy students doubted for a moment whether they had really won, and Yukina was stunned by what she saw. She had no doubt that the fencing technique of the White Swordsman Saint Cloud was exactly the same as Roy's, so Roy was the same swordsman. Meanwhile, Roy had to go to the Kingdom of Lutetia because the King of Lutetia, Lucian Ven Lutetia, summoned him and Valor and scolded them because he took their request for help from the Sword Saint as an insult, and Valor looked at Eclipse, knowing he should have gone to the king first when they were being scolded. Someone came and told the king that everything was fine. It was the premier and his favorite NS, who was also the niece of King Lisanne and the head of the third-year student council of the academy. The premier said the enemies probably counted on the absence of the third-year students, but now that they had returned, he entrusted his favorite NS Alange, one of the 12 heavenly mages of the academy, to oversee things there from now on, and everyone at court knew this. One of the guys recalled that recently the 6th-ranked sword demon lost to an ordinary student, which caught Roy's attention, and the premier said this could not be simply ignored, and Valor knew the person in question. Anise declared that this time she would put the academy's forces in order and establish a proper hierarchy so that this would not happen again, and then she began to inquire about the student Roy level, an unsuccessful noble who defeated the 6th in rank, and rumors said that even Yukina, the 3rd in rank, was watching over him. So for the sake of the academy, she considers herself responsible for re-educating Roy, but she is not sure if she can do it in her current state. After several days of the Empire's invasion, he returned to the academy, and the students talked about the heroic deeds of the great sage and the Sword Saint. In the Kingdom of Albios, the Sword Saint was celebrated as a hero, while in Lutetia the king and ministers scolded him for acting alone. Roy just wanted to quickly pass the baton to his successor. Then Yukina approached and asked him to give her a minute. Roy said that she rarely invites him for a walk and noticed that her uniform looked different and had a number. Yukina replied that the student council president decided that students of rank should wear emblems. And Roy added that he heard she was supposedly sent a letter of thanks from King Albios and Lutishi for bravery during the defense of the academy, but Yukina was not shy to give credit to others who helped her. And most importantly, Roy did the right thing by quickly calling for reinforcements. Roy noticed a strange smile on her face. Then she said that during the battle she saw the Sword Saint fight for the first time, and seeing him so close was pure luck. Roy said it was good that she saw her target with her own eyes. She replied that it really was wonderful, but then she came closer to Roy and whispered to him too. Keep leading her in the role of Roy, the White Sword Saint. Roy was surprised by this, and when he asked what she meant, Yukina said not to underestimate her magic eye, through which she clearly recognized Roy's secret technique called torchlight. Roy did not know what to answer because she said she never thought she would meet the Sword Saint in the form of a wandering youth. Roy said it was funny to imagine that a failed nobleman like him could be the Sword Saint. But Yukina asked him not to object because it was pointless, promised not to tell anyone because she understood why he was always silent, and Roy fell silent, hearing her words full of faith. And she added that her eyes never make mistakes. Now she cannot help but think that training with the Sword Saint was the best, and Roy finally admitted it, saying that he underestimated her. Yukina told him about her duel tomorrow, and asked him to come to watch the duel of his wards, and later that night Roy finally finished the daily patrols during the eclipse and made sure that the Academy's barrier was restored. It was then that he noticed another type of barrier around the arena and decided that it was more of an internal defense than a hostile obstacle. He approached and examined this high-quality barrier that only an experienced mage could create and decided to watch it. Roy quietly entered the barrier to find out who created it. To his surprise, he finally found a beautiful girl. The girl and the dancers stand up and dance casually under the moonlight. He felt creepy thinking that she was training behind the barrier, but on closer inspection, it turned out to be a noble lady trying to imitate a threat, and the excitement did not know what to do. And just then the girl felt something and asked if someone was there. Roy realized that if someone noticed that a defeated nobleman was passing through this barrier, it would fuel rumors about him, so he used teleportation and disappeared without letting her notice. When Roy found himself in his room, he wondered who could have created such an obstacle that even teachers would find difficult to handle, and remembered that she was blonde. The next day at school, Roy sat next to Annette. She was carelessly chewing snacks because she received a large reward from the Academy for stopping the invasion. She sent most of the money home and kept a little for expenses, so now she can fully focus on ranked battles. Ranked battles are competitions where lower-ranked participants challenge higher-ranked ones to raise their rank, and Roy thought that even for students in the top 10, it was quite intense. Then Annette noticed that Roy could also make it into the top 10 swords if he wanted, because he even managed to defeat the 6th-ranked, but Roy knows that if he joined such a thing, he would be completely exhausted and have even more work, so he prefers to stay away from such troubles. 7th in the ranking challenged her for the spot. Yukina's duel began with an exchange of quick strikes, and she remained calm as if everything was under control. Roy thinks she can turn the sword into a magical ice sword, but on the other hand, that would be a fair limitation. The boy continued to attack her with long-range gust magic strikes, making his blade invisible to the one being attacked, and Yukina jumped to strike from above. The battle became intense because she was repelling wind attacks in Nidori, and now Yukina took a sharp stance that Roy recognized. When she thrust the blade into the enemy's side, Roy noticed that this strike resembled how she behaves after defeating an opponent. She winked at Roy as if showing she could exactly mimic his move. The next battle between the best mages was about to begin. Moreover, the head of the student council, Enise, and Yukina crossed paths with her returning from the arena. Roy asked Annette if Enise was really that popular because the crowd was loudly supporting her. Annette said that Enise Alenge was like an idol in the empire of Lutetia, and without a doubt, she was as beautiful as she was talented. Roy checked that the NS opponent ranked 8th among mages, and was surprised that Roy was indifferent to this, as if he was not interested in beauty. Roy clearly said that he was only interested in combat tactics, not anything else. She was impressed, and now Roy eagerly awaited the match. As soon as the match began, Enise simultaneously unleashed fire and water magic on her, and such a dual attack gave a brilliant start, catching the public by surprise, but NS easily repelled that attack. She was restrained by magic to limit the opponent's movements. The opponent did not want to give up so easily, but her attempts were futile against Enise's powerful magic. Enise said she could not afford to lose, so she would have to end this match here. Everyone noticed the explosion from her attack, and everyone greeted her as one of the most promising candidates for the title of Great Sage. She was known for skillfully controlling fire, water, wind, earth, and even lightning. Even Roy had to admit that she was truly a real sorceress, but he saw that all this probably created great pressure for her, and outwardly she seemed to handle it well. Annette. She was impressed to see such a wonderful match, and even more fascinated by Anista and her light hair. She wanted to meet her one day and surpass her. Then Roy remembered that this hair reminded him of something, so later at night he decided to check. Meanwhile, the same girl who danced last night turned out to be NSL, and this time dared to go out in a bunny costume. Roy also approached and watched what this girl was doing. She was talking to herself, feeling relieved because she was not limited by titles as one of the 12 best mages, the Prime Minister's daughter, or the King's niece, and wanted this freedom to last longer, and Roy could hear her from here. Anna thought her outfit might be too revealing. Eri watched and did not understand if she was embarrassed. Anna worried that someone might see her like that because yesterday, it seemed, someone already had. Roy decided to intervene and said he felt the same and that she better restrain herself. Janice was taken aback by his straightforward approach, and Roy told her to learn from her mistakes and curb the habit of attracting attention, and tried to ask who was there, but the presence she felt vanished like a lie. Meanwhile, Roy got out of there and hoped that when she realized she was exposed, she would quiet down a bit and find another way to relieve tension. He worried that if the one who found her turned out to be a spy of the Galia Empire, they would definitely use her. He felt sorry to bother her, but it would be for her own good. During training, she noticed that it was less intense than usual. Roy said it was a sign of progress, and she thought maybe it was because of a good mentor. Roy explained that the advanced techniques he was teaching her would not give instant results. Yukina still wanted to know what her final strike in the duel was, and Roy admitted it was a great move. He knows well that she tried to repeat his move. It does not bother him as long as she likes it. Then Roy meets NS, who is greeted by other students. Suddenly a small gust of wind lifts her skirt. The boys cannot help but look. She pretends to be embarrassed, but our guy is the only one here who knows she did it on purpose. He felt that he needed to give her a serious lesson. But he did not suspect that Yukina noticed how he looked at Ennis the same way as other boys did, and got angry at him, considering him a pervert. Roy does not understand why he interfered like that. Later, when it got dark, he decided to go to the arena once more. Roy saw no signs of a barrier nearby, and it did not seem that she had gone anywhere. He worried that she might escalate the situation, so he had to find her quickly. He did not know why he was looking for this beautiful exhibitionist, but outwardly it looked like an important matter for the country. Roy thought tensely about where she could be now. After searching around, he remembered a forbidden place near the forest, which would be ideal for her to satisfy her craving for thrills. Roy knows that Ennis can handle most monsters here, but if something goes wrong, it could. This foretold trouble, and he ran fast, thinking about what this girl might have in mind while persistently searching for her. She was casually bathing in an open pond under the sky. She fought monsters while bathing, but Anus easily dealt with them with her magic. But to her surprise, one of those monsters took her clothes and was already about to run away. Roy managed to deal with that monster in time and return her clothes, and he was curious who he was. Roy did not look at her and asked her to get dressed, but Annie was too surprised and reflexively screamed. She asked him why he was here. Roy told her that she better get dressed first. Annie's initially wanted to know what he intended to do with her. Roy assured her he would do nothing, just handed her the clothes, and then her underwear fell to the ground. The screen blushed. Roy noticed how strange it was that she was swimming naked and yet panicking about the underwear. He magically created a wooden box for her so she could change, and stepped away to give her space. She asked him twice not to peek, and he thought that if he wanted to, he wouldn't bother with all this. After she changed clothes, Anis asked him who he was, but Roy said they would have to wait because monsters were approaching and they needed to leave. Anis wanted to go alone, but Roy insisted on accompanying her because he could not allow a girl to go alone at night, and she said it was none of his business. Roy suddenly grabbed her, told her to be quiet, and jumped into the sky, and she was a little scared because of the height. And after some time, Roy brought her back to the academy and told her that they had arrived. Anis kept her eyes closed most of the time, so opening them suddenly was too bright. Roy was already about to leave. It was no longer worth staying here, and just then Anis looked at his face and recognized Roy Level, an unsuccessful nobleman. Meeting him exactly like that was the best moment to ask a few questions that interested her. Roy asked her where she knew his name from. And more importantly, he wanted her to first explain her strange habits and then ask him for something. Anis was confused and asked not to call it a strange habit, in which case Roy suggested calling it a display hobby, which embarrassed her even more, and Roy still asked why she did it, and Anis said that many people expect her to become the next great sage. But she does not consider herself fit to become a great wise woman. Roy suspected this because every time she read a spell, he felt a lack of mana, and as he noticed, it did not surprise him. She feels that it is not fitting to be a great wise woman, to which he replied that it is more about suitability, and if he has to express an opinion, her feeling is correct. Anna added that she loves this academy, so she needs to continue being an excellent student. Roy could understand that this explained her tension, and if he wanted her to know it was another man, he would have attacked her in that state. But Henise unexpectedly replied that it would be attractive enough for her to be attacked in that situation. She said she was used to being visible often, especially in Nen's eyes, but her self-awareness made the boy wary, and he just wanted to get out of there, while Henise smiled and asked if he was embarrassed in her presence. Roy explained that he sees her by the way she sits. She immediately hid herself. Roy asked her not to do that if she feels awkward. She replied that he should be the one to be confused. Roy said he is used to beauties and hardly reacts to anyone, and Anna noted that Roy is an unsuccessful nobleman, but wants to know who he really is. She thought that he might be skilled enough to defeat the sixth, but seeing what he had done in the last few days, she definitely knew that he was much stronger. Roy told her that being the son of a baron was a hassle. She probably understood what he meant, and she was asked if he was trying to help her because she was the daughter of a baron. He replied that it was part of the matter, but above all, he simply could not ignore her. When she felt cornered and resorted to such a way of relieving stress, he decided to help her. Anise could not believe that he would do such a thing for her, but Roy clearly said that he would only do it within his capabilities, and warned that repeating her strange habit would lead to problems, so Anise knew this and agreed to his offer. And she asked him for a favor. Favorite to continue watching her, a way of greeting. He thought so but did not even guess. The next day he was appointed assistant to the president of the student council without his knowledge or consent, and NS herself was behind it. Roy explained that he could agree only to watch over her, but he did not agree to such a position. NS replied that there was a good reason for that. She said that the assistant would be able to accompany the president. Roy would be given bonus points in the academic record, and she wanted to re-educate him, because you cannot allow a guy who defeated one of the best fencers of the academy to just loaf around. Roy decided that he was already in the local quota and would not be expelled for laziness, but Anna did not want him to be called a failure among the nobles anymore. However, Roy did not want to have anything to do with the student council, and when Anise heard this, she was upset and said that maybe she had overdone it, and Roy felt guilty for upsetting her. He agreed to be her assistant until Anise stopped the strange habits during stretching. Anise was glad to hear this, and our days in the student council became even more exhausting. Later he asked if she had any activities to relax after stretching, such as reading, but her answer turned out to be unexpected. The effect turned out to be a term paper. All the students came to watch her ride horseback, and Anise clearly somewhat satisfied her showy hobby through the term paper, so Roy no longer had any hope for this girl. Returning to the student council room, she said she felt better. Roy asked her to pull herself together because she just relieves stress differently but with the same purpose. He scolded her and asked if she had any other hobbies. She ran in response, and Roy clearly saw why she wanted that. He did not want to pressure her so much but wanted to help her relax. He led her to the bakery to taste sweets and drink coffee. The seller recognized her and offered the best treats they had. Roy watched her from afar and thought it might work out. But later Anise returned with a sour expression because she couldn't drink black coffee. Roy asked why she drank it, and Anise wanted to behave maturely in front of everyone as the student council president. Moreover, sweets in the bakery were served with black coffee, and this couldn't be changed. Roy became worried because Anise has a habit of worrying a lot alone and in front of others, so next time he decided to take her to a place where they wouldn't be seen. Meanwhile, Annette was training fireballs at the sacred training ground. Then Roy approached and called her to greet him. She responded, but when she noticed a person behind him, she was surprised. It turned out to be NSL, and she joined his greeting. Anise greeted Annette sunnier and said she knew about her problem at the academy. Annette couldn't believe Anise knew her and explained that Roy brought her here so she could freely use magic. Anise asked if she could join, and Annette agreed, adding that it would also be stressful for her not to be able to use magic. Anise asked for advice on stress relief, to which Annette replied that she likes to eat delicious food, and it is a kind of. So Roy and gang decided to try cooking to help Anise relax, and Roy invited his sister Reena to help, but as soon as Anise tried, Reena smelled something burning. And her first attempt completely failed. Not only that, the kitchen was turned into a mess, and unused ingredients were scattered everywhere. Reena was surprised that her brother took care of the perfect student council president Anise, but now she didn't seem perfect at all. Anise apologized for the mess, then Reena said her brother might indulge her, but she would be strict with her. We asked Reena to be gentler because Anise came to rest, but Reena seriously started teaching her to cook. Even Roy could no longer save Anise. Reena strictly gave them instructions in turn until they were completely exhausted. They finished cooking, and later in the student council room, Rory apologized to Anise for the inconvenience, but she was not offended because in the end they made a tasty omelet. She was tired and a little confused, so she just leaned over and laid her head on his lap, and Rory didn't want to disturb her and asked if she was comfortable. She replied that she was just tired and needed to stay like that a little longer. Eventually, she remembered that today they definitely tried many ways to relax, and although it was not easy, she really enjoyed the time spent. Roy was still worried because this does not solve her problem fundamentally, but he replied that it was okay because the academy would soon go on a 3-week break, and during this time, Ennis was entrusted to strengthen the barrier on Yeha. At the academy, Roy admitted that she is truly an exceptional person who takes on many responsibilities, and he sees that she cares for others more than herself. So it is no wonder that she is always exhausted, and Roy hopes that she will be all right, and he also said that Reena wants a family trip. A trip, and he has no other vacation plans, so he will probably spend most of the time resting at home. Annie's like this, and it seems she has something in mind. A few days later, Linus Level unexpectedly informed the children that they would go to the Empire of Lutetia, which surprised Roy and Reena. Linus explained that the trip was so sudden because the Prime Minister invited him to discuss future affairs. He also heard that Roy is getting closer to the Prime Minister's daughter, so if he wants to meet with him, Linus is proud of his son for attracting the attention of beauties, but Roy does not understand why the Prime Minister suddenly became interested in him. He thought it might be Annie's plan, and besides, Rin threateningly asked both their father and brother not to embarrass them there. When they arrived at Ellen's estate in the Empire of Lutetia, Annie's met Roy, and Linus greeted Prime Minister Ellen and said that 12 years had passed since their last meeting. 12 years ago, during the war, they were both excellent strategists, and now Lanjast Annie's was to begin duties as one of the 12 leading mages, but she had to take a leave, and she wanted Reena and Roy to meet again over dinner. Then Alange approached to meet Linus's son and daughter. Linus introduced him to Roy and Reena. Roy politely greeted him, and Alange said that Reena is probably very attractive, and because of this she might be bothered by persistent admirers, and he has the same problems because of his daughter. For some reason, Roy felt that the Prime Minister was inwardly angry with him, although he pretended to be glad that he gets along with his daughter, and outwardly subtly asked Roy not to get carried away, and Roy felt that Lange treated them badly. Then Linus was glad that he was given a villa for the duration of their stay, and Rinus seemed fascinated by the view and numerous shops at the bottom of the empire, and Linus said that his son Liam would not be able to relax next to the Prime Minister, and suddenly Roy felt something troubling that Linus noticed from his facial expression. Linus suggested that Reena go see the shop that interested her, and this pleased her. When she asked her brother to go with them, Roy said he was a little tired and would rest a bit. Linus took Reena outside, saying they would return for dinner. Roy was grateful to his father for the help there. Roy transformed into Eclipse, the great sage, and was annoyed that he could not even rest peacefully. Because of this attack, the magical dolls had firearms and began shooting at him, and Eclipse drew his divine lightning spear. Destroy all magical dolls at once. He remembers that if someone in the Empire of Gallia's army is really serious about the invasion, then this invasion of magical dolls cannot be all they plan, and he is sure that there is something bigger behind it. Meanwhile, the puppeteer watched the eclipse from afar and had to admit that the power of the great sage is truly serious, and it seems he has plans to make everything more interesting now. Later at dinner, Alange apologized for his daughter's absence. She was busy with her duties, and Linus did not object, but he was a little sad that he spent little time with his daughter. Alange said that his daughter is the home of the empire. His Majesty wants her to become a great sage in the future, because this will restore the dignity of the king and the trust of the subjects, as someone of royal blood will become the strongest mage, but lately Alange worries that this may cause pain to his daughter. It hurts him because he has asked the great wise Eclipse several times to take her as an apprentice, but Eclipse said she is not suitable. Linus teased, hinting to Roy that this might be an understatement because she puts magic training first. Nothing can be done. Alange does not understand what Eclipse thinks, but if his daughter still desires this, he will not stop her hoping she will change her mind. He suffers. At the same time, Hannah came and apologized for being late. Linus invited her to dinner. She said she was previously busy with duties, so she quickly sat directly opposite Roy and asked the maid to set the table for her. Roy pointed to the place to the left of his father, but she felt uncomfortable talking to Roy there. After that, Ennis simply unbuttoned her coat because she was tired of standing by His Majesty all day in a tight uniform, and her clothes now looked too loose for the event, which attracted attention and was uncomfortable. Roy had previously addressed her as the elder. She was advised to change into something comfortable and not to adjust dinner time for others, just to relax. She was worried that if she changed, she would miss the meal, but Roy continued eating so as not to force her to eat together. Later, Alange approached Roy and called him to ask if he had a minute, led him to the living room, and casually said that it might be just imagination, but wanted to know if Ennis was causing him problems. to which Roy replied that it was not exactly problems, but Annie's might be accumulating stress. Lange became worried and said that she has been shy of strangers since childhood and cannot relax if there is no familiar person nearby. Such friends are few today and very valuable, so Lange hoped that Roy could be such a person for NS. He understands that he might be to blame for causing stress to his child, and Roy understands how a father might feel, so he assured him that he would do everything possible to support NF. Lange thanked him and officially asked Roy to look after his daughter. After this conversation, Roy realized that he had never seen NS spend time with anyone specific, and probably people around only see her title, not the real person. In fact, the root of the problem is that NS has no equal friend with whom she could share burdens and expectations, and as one of the 12 strongest mages, she is constantly overloaded with work that exhausts her both mentally and physically, and he understands that it must be exhausting. So Roy decided to become Eclipse to be a close friend to NS and support her in his own way. Chapter 14. At first, Eclipse reported to Prime Minister Ellen about the magical dolls he had broken, and she counted on him in case of future problems. Then unexpectedly, Eclipse recalled the work of the 12 mages and said that most tasks for them are assigned to young women. LNG said that mages in this country mostly engage in research, so it is easier for the king to ask relatives about affairs, and for public appearances it is better to turn to Anis, and Eclipse added that even though it is easy to approach her, she should focus on studying as a student, especially if she aspires to become a great sage. Lange was supposed to personally tell the king about this, but was afraid it might make the situation worse. Eclipse asked Lange to tell the king that Anis has not improved in magic, and that should be enough for him to agree to distribute the duties of the 12 mages equally among all. Gates said that he should have heard this too. It was Eclipse who urgently summoned Valor here, although he was actually not free. Eclipse explained that this was necessary for the future of young talents. Valor admitted that the workload is indeed somewhat concentrated on those who are easy to ask, so it is worth returning to the future. Eclipse asked both to contact another 12 million and involve each of them in working on all tasks assigned to NS. L. Engine V. Laura gave them more work, and Eclipse expected that they would handle it with her. L. Engine felt that something was wrong here and thought that she suddenly focused on NS as if planning to take his student away. But Eclipse made it clear that he just decided to take better care of the juniors a little because. Now there is a war, and Ennis is a very talented mage, but he wants Ellen to understand that to be a great sage one must be sharper and more destructive, so right now she is not suitable for that. Now Ellen better understood what Eclipse meant, and he promised to create a world where Ennis could become a great sage. For this, they need to restore peace in the kingdom. It seems Eclipse conveyed his opinion to Ellen. So he returned as Roy to Ellen's estate. Ennis asked what he thought about her dress, and Roy replied that it was too revealing. She wanted to look good at the celebration of the great sage's victory over 400,000 soldiers of the Imperial Army. Roy advised her to cover the dress a little, after which she spent about half an hour choosing an outfit and eventually asked him to choose. Hannah said that tomorrow there would be a festival in the capital, but Roy indifferently mentioned it and advised her to eat whatever she wanted. Hannah was embarrassed by his cold tone, so she asked him to show her the places. Roy replied that she herself could lead his empire of Lutetia. She agreed, and they decided to go to the festival together. Roy also chose a dress for her for the evening celebration. It turned out to be a beautiful dress with open shoulders of the same jade green color as her eyes. He complimented her on her green eyes. She asked him if he always spoke to girls like that. Roy himself did not quite understand what she meant, and they went to the place of the victory celebration. They saw that Annette had already arrived there and greeted her, after which people came one by one to greet NS1, which kept her busy for some time, and Roy thought she would not return soon, so he simply asked Annette what she was doing here. She replied that she came by the Guardian's order, supposedly to establish contacts with others. But she had no experience communicating with people. She had only recently learned etiquette. Roy said that as soon as Ennis returned, he would introduce her to others, and nervousness was visible on Annette's face. He understood that now responsibility was falling on her, because to revive the fallen house, she would need numerous connections and failure was possible for her. Just then a boy approached Annette and complimented her. He asked her name, but when Annette introduced herself as a representative of the Sunnier family, the boy remembered that it was a disgraced noble family and no longer greeted her. Annette was clearly offended, and this was only the beginning, because other nobles began to discuss what a disgraced noble family was doing here. Roy tried to defend her, but Annette stopped him and said that everything was fine. And it is true that she really was not fit to be here. Roy stayed by Annette until Ennis returned. Enise noticed that Annette was not feeling very well and asked if she was okay. Roy asked Enise to take care of Annette, after which she led her and showed her the place. But some man informed Enise that the king was calling her, and Enise did not want to leave Ed alone, so Ed told her to go and that everything would be fine, and although he had to leave, he promised to return as soon as he could. Meanwhile, Roy was planning something, so he went out, recalling his mother's words about living freely, and wanted to keep those words and follow the voice of his heart, so he transformed into an eclipse. Believing that fallen nobles with unrecognized talents remain unknown to people, and some are forced to bear titles against their will. So he wanted to independently redefine what freedom means for everyone.